Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got something really specific today. You sent us this source with a completely different take on a classic.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. We're looking at Stephen King's It.
Right, but not as horror exactly.
Yeah.
Our mission, based on this single source, is to unpack the idea that it is actually, well, a grammatical allegory.
It is a very focused lens. We're essentially setting aside the scary clown for a moment anyway, and looking at the story as being about language rules versus, let's say, creative freedom.
And the source doesn't pull any punches. It flat out states that it is an allegory about, and this is their term, grammar Nazis killing off creativity.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a huge claim, isn't it? It forces you to totally rethink who the monster is.
Absolutely. And we should probably clarify that term, grammar Nazis, right away. As the source uses it, it seems to mean linguistic prescriptivists.
Okay, so people who are really strict about rules, like there's only one correct way to write or speak.
Exactly. Those who police language. And the source argues that enforcement, that rigidity, is actually the oppressive force in the book.
Okay, so let's get into this allegory of suppression first. How does this grammar battle actually play out in the story according to the source?
Well, what's really interesting is how the source connects abstract concepts like syntax rules to the horror elements.
Mhm.
It takes things we normally think are, fine, like grammar rules,
Uh-huh.
and recasts them as like weapons in a fight over ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Think about something like a misplaced modifier.
Okay, yeah. Creates confusion sometimes.
Right, ambiguity. It lets different meanings exist. Maybe it puts emphasis in a weird spot. It's messy, but it might even be like surprisingly effective sometimes.
But technically wrong.
Exactly. And for the hardcore rule follower, the prescriptivist, that ambiguity, that messiness, it's almost like a moral failure.
Ah.
The source suggests that the kids' creativity, their imagination is kind of represented by that linguistic chaos and the drive to clean it up, to force language and ideas into a super rigid box. That's the suppression.
Okay, so that sets up the stakes pretty clearly. It's not just about, failing an English test.
No, not at all.
The source says the result of obsessing over correctness is literally killing off creativity. Because you're so focused on the comma rules, you miss the big idea.
Precisely. The structure becomes like a straitjacket for your thoughts. Conformity becomes more important than the actual, maybe messy original idea.
Right.
And the cost is imagination itself. If your ideas are only judged by how well they fit the rules, then the really new ideas, the ones that break the rules, they don't get out. They
Right.
get suffocated.
For you listening, trying to learn something complex or just get a point across, and you've probably felt this, right?
Oh, definitely.
Like you're in a meeting, you have a great idea, but it gets shot down because you didn't use the right template or the approved buzzwords.
Yeah, that feeling, exactly. That's the kind of suffocation the source seems to be pointing to. Structure getting in the way of substance.
So it's really about power then. Control. If you enforce the rules hard enough, grammar, jargon, whatever, you're not just controlling how people talk.
You're controlling what they can even think.
That's the core of the suppression argument here.
And it doesn't just happen person to person. The source says this expands out to the whole community.
Yes, that's the next layer. The source talks about the injustice that a whole community can be built around that ideology.
Okay, so we're moving from individual grammar policing to, like, the whole town of Derry being structured around this.
Metaphorically, yeah. If the town's foundation is this rigid enforcement of linguistic rules, what does that imply about life there?
It means conformity is everything. Being different, thinking differently, expressing yourself in a non-standard way. That's not just frowned upon. It's like a threat to the system.
The town becomes a symbol for any institution, really maybe academia, government, even some companies that prioritizes perfect form over messy content.
The source sees it as systemic. Rule enforcement isn't just something individuals do, it's baked into the social structure, into how people identify as a group. And anything outside that is dangerous.
And that's where the injustice comes in. If creativity, imagination, these sort of wilder uses of language are actively squashed by the community's structure.
Then the system itself is unfair. It's inherently biased against new ideas, against human potential. It's not just a few strict teachers. The whole setup is the problem.
This is where that distinction you mentioned earlier comes in, right? Prescriptivism versus descriptivism.
Exactly. Prescriptivism insists on rigid, often historical rules. Descriptivism observes how language actually evolves and is used by people.
And this allegorical dairy. purely prescriptivist, according to the source.
Yes, they're trying to freeze language, freeze thought, stop the natural, messy evolution.
So if the community, the structure, is the aggressor, systematically killing creativity, then we have to reconsider the creature itself, Pennywise.
We do. And this is where the source really goes for it. It makes a seriously provocative claim.
Okay, lay it on us. What's the claim?
The source states, very directly, Pennywise is the real victim.
Whoa. Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
How does the source square that with the, the actual horror, the violence, the child eating? If Pennywise is creativity, does that mean creativity is inherently monstrous?
That's the obvious challenge, isn't it? And the source's argument here is, well, it's complex. If you accept the premise that the community are the aggressors, the rule enforcers,
Right.
then it follows that they would demonize whatever opposes their rigid order. Pennywise, as the symbol of unbound, chaotic, maybe even formless creative energy,
Would naturally seem terrifying to people obsessed with structure.
exactly. The terror isn't inherent in creativity itself, but it's the reaction of the conformist society to something it can't control or define. It's inherently anarchic from their point of view.
Okay, I think I'm following. So the chaos is scary to them.
Right. And think about it. If you suppress creativity, imagination for decades, for generations, it doesn't just vanish, it probably festers, right? So the monstrousness of Pennywise in this allegorical reading is like the grotesque return of the repressed. The creative energy, having been denied and suppressed for so long by the community,
Comes back twisted, distorted, and violent because it was never allowed a healthy outlet.
that's the idea. The community's own suppression creates the monster they fear. The more they try to kill creativity, the more horrific its eventual eruption becomes. Pennywise's violence reflects the violence done to creativity by the town.
Wow. That completely reframes the story. It's not just good kids versus an evil monster anymore.
No, the kids, who are often presented as more imaginative, more descriptive, maybe breaking linguistic rules naturally.
Right, they talk like kids, not like grammar textbooks.
Exactly. They become these temporary fighters against the results of their town's long-term suppression. They're battling the symptom, not the root cause, which is the town's ideology.
So Pennywise being the victim is the end point of that whole argument. If the town exists to kill creativity via rules, then creativity's ultimate symbol has to be the target, the victim.
It's the logical, if unsettling, conclusion based on the source's specific allegorical framework. Even if its manifestation is terrifying because of how badly it's been treated, fundamentally it's the oppressed party.
That is,
Yeah.
a really mind-bending interpretation of King. This whole deep dive really shows you what happens when you apply one super specific critical lens, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
We took this famous horror story, and just by following this one source's argument about linguistic control,
We found this whole other narrative underneath about systematic suppression, conformity, and creativity fighting back.
the big takeaway for you, the listener, has to be the power of reading allegorically. Sticking to one interpretation like this can totally invert a story. Heroes become conformists, the monster becomes a kind of martyr for chaos.
It really demonstrates how a narrative can hold multiple, even contradictory meanings depending on the questions you ask of it.
And it leaves us with a pretty big question, I think, beyond just this book. If language rules grammar, syntax, the jargon in your field, even just sticking to the format, if that could be read as potentially oppressive, how often do we, maybe unconsciously, prioritize being correct over finding actual value or exploring a new idea?
Yeah, think about areas in your own life, your work, your learning, where structure is enforced really strongly. Are you maybe accidentally creating a system where fresh ideas, that messy, vital stuff gets sacrificed just to keep things neat and tidy?
And if you are,
Yeah.
what kind of potentially scary suppressed energy might be building up under the surface?
A disturbing thought to end on. Control, chaos, and the hidden battles within language itself.
Definitely gives you something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.